Hi, my name's Fiona and this is my video diary in relation to my journey with labyrinthitis or vestibular neuronitis. My journey started on the 5th of May 2018 and I was just about to embark on the park run, which for those of you that know is a 5-kilometre fun run in the UK. Just about to warm up when my first episode of dizziness happened, didn't think anything of it and started to run or jog. Halfway around the track, another dizzy spell occurred which made me stop running. I felt quite weird, but I just put it down to low blood pressure at the time, carried on running, finished the race and then had another 2 quite bad dizzy turns afterwards. Got into my car to drive home and had the most horrendous dizzy turn at the wheel, which ultimately I had to pull over to stop the car. The onset of that was a severe panic attack because the world was spinning around me, and that was the start of the journey. So here we are, just over 10 months later, and it's been very much a roller coaster from day to day, week to week, month to month. For those of you that are in a similar position to me, I'll just give you a brief summary of my symptoms. The acute dizzy turns, however, mine last for anything up to 10 seconds to 5 to 10 minutes. They haven't lasted for hours, unlike other people, and it is that sensation of it drops you to your knees, the world is just spinning around you, you can't focus with nystagmus, the eyes are rolling in the head, and you just are panicking because you've got no control over it whatsoever. And there's no trigger for it. It can happen at any time. So you could be out, you could be in the house. Like me, I've got a 7-year-old child to look after. Obviously my husband's at work, so that is the scary thing. If this happens, I need to be aware of where I am and who I'm with. So that's the dizzy spells, albeit they're not lasting for hours, but when they do come, they're extremely acute. And then it takes my body about 2 days to recover. Additional symptoms is visual distortion. In particular, my right eye have black floaters. If I look, it's as if there's black floaty bits in my eye. I can't focus on things, blurred vision. Again, this is sporadic from day to day, week to week, month to month. The other thing is tinnitus, albeit that's not, that's livable, that comes and goes. Initially it was the fullness in the ear, both ears, tinnitus in both ears, and then everything else that goes with it, fatigue, feeling like your legs are like lead, really spaced out in your head, real sort of brain fog, difficulty concentrating, and you just feel like you are literally living inside your head. And because, like any other form of invisible illness, those that are close to you, family and friends, as much as you try to explain how you feel, it is so difficult to communicate. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed at night, you are dealing with this invisible illness in your head, which affects obviously your balance. What I didn't say was initially for the first sort of 4 months of this journey, I was veering off to the left quite considerably. I think my neighbours thought I must be having a bottle of wine in the morning when I was out in the garden, couldn't walk in a straight line. So that's the beginning of the journey. I was very fortunate that I had a friend who works in an audiology department in a local hospital, And from week 1, I did the basic vestibular rehabilitation exercises every single day, just in an attempt to try and get myself better. So I went to the doctors and I explained that I had been diagnosed with labyrinthitis back in 2009, however that only lasted for a weekend, and then I'd had it 2 or 3 times before, but it had only ever been for 1 or 2 days at a time. Nothing on this level whatsoever. So unfortunately, when I went to my local GP, they have to keep me under them for a 3-month period. That resulted in me being tested for BPPV, which came out negative. Labyrinthitis was diagnosed by my GP. I was prescribed numerous medication, from Sonarazine, obviously your anti-sickness tablets. I didn't have a lot of nausea, and I didn't have any vomiting in the first 6 months. I had nausea, but there was no vomiting with it. Tablets didn't really make any difference when I felt nauseous. Just had to come, it came in waves. A bit like morning sickness for those of you that have experienced that, but you don't get the baby after the end of the 9 months. So GP kept me under him for 3 months, at which point I was then referred to a specialist, ear, nose and throat specialist, and there was a 4-month waiting list. So you could imagine my despair. In the meantime, my life was put on hold. Unable to drive, unable to work, battling through day to day, trying to keep a house going, and yeah, very tough journey. So then I managed to see a specialist consultant who had all the tests, no loss of hearing. However, audiology tests resulted in balance function in my left ear being approximately 30% weaker than in my right ear, which obviously coincided with me listing off to the left-hand side in my initial acute stages. So I then was prescribed betahistine and was being treated for Meniere's disease, which again, I actually got worse. My symptoms got worse on that medication. I was still doing my vestibular exercises every day, twice a day. And then from the period of July, August, September, October and November, every month I was having acute bouts of dizziness, though it was relentless. November was horrendous. And in November, 6 months into my journey, I had 11 straight days of acute dizziness, which absolutely floored me. And unfortunately, that was when my mental health took a nosedive, understandably. I went back to see the consultant. I went to see my GP. I was put on medication for anxiety and depression, which again was anything that would help, because the anxiety was just awful. I have never experienced anything like that, physically and mentally debilitating. You know, panic attacks, etc. Totally goes against, you know, what I stand for. Always outgoing, very physical person, very active, very positive, and it just wiped my feet from underneath me. So I needed that extra crutch to get me through the tough periods, which obviously I'm still on the medication. So here, November 2018, we went to see the consultant and a decision was made to inject my left ear with a form of steroid straight into the middle ear under local anaesthetic in a bid to that it settles down any inflammation in the left ear. uncomfortable, not, local anaesthetic. It wasn't, when you're at a desperate stage, you'll try anything. So that proved to be particularly successful. The first injection got me through Christmas, and then we got into January, and then my balance started taking a backward step. And I just felt that generally I was starting to go downhill again. So I went back to the specialist in January, and they gave me a second steroid injection at the end of January, and unfortunately that made things worse. Well, I don't know if it made things worse, but it certainly didn't help, because from there on in, I've had a week where I've had no woozy spells or acute dizzy spells. What I mean by woozy spells, they would be slowly the room woozes round, and it lasted for 1 or 2 seconds. That would happen up to 7-8 times a day on a daily basis. So the second injection, unfortunately, just hasn't been as successful. In between that time, I managed to see an audiology specialist, a fabulous lady, very experienced, who gave me some tailored exercises to do, and was of the opinion that the left-hand side of the balance function we need to strengthen, and could take possibly up to 12 months of rehabilitation, which, take that in your stride. I've done 10, what's another 12 months of rehabilitation. My concern was to get these acute dizzy spells under control, because it was just a vicious circle. Every time I have them, the anxiety goes through the roof, the depression kicks in, and I need to break that cycle. So we're on the 18th of March 2019, and unfortunately, a week and a half ago, I had the worst episode ever in the last 10 months. I think it was probably triggered by stress. That's the only trigger I've managed to work out in this journey, without obsessing over everything, which basically I ended up on my hands and knees on my kitchen floor, just wanting the world to swallow me up. My husband luckily was there, who then had to physically take me to the toilet, at which point I proceeded to vomit. Managed to get up the stairs on my hands and knees, got into bed, and yeah, that was me, wiped out mentally and physically. Physically for 2 days, mentally a week. Just to really get my head around the fact that that's the worst attack in 10 months. And I was just about to get my driving licence back, because I'd had my driving licence revoked, understandably, and you had to be clear. So I was aiming to get my driving licence back to hopefully go back to work. And I was 2 weeks off that, and that was knocked on the head. So the moral of this story is, my journey is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. So unpredictable, and so frustrating, and very, very debilitating, just completely. The toughest thing I've ever experienced in my life so far, which I hope when I come out the other side I'll be able to make some rhyme or reason as to what I've learned from this. I have learned that you need to dig deep, and you need to stay focused, and you need to be hopeful that things will get better over time. Patience and time, which I am not the best at doing either. So I found it particularly hard, and if I'm honest, I think I've been my own worst enemy. Well, I know for a fact my husband would agree with that. So we're at the next chapter. I am due to go back to see my consultant on Wednesday, and we'll discuss what options, if any, I have. Just on the note of the steroid injection, I'm reluctant to get a third one. The side effects I had from that, it's pretty hardcore stuff, and it made me very low for 2 weeks after each injection. bear in mind you're injecting next to the brain. It's a steroid. You know, one of the side effects is mood swings. Put that on top of already anxiety and depression, and you know, it's kind of like a real uphill battle. So for that reason, I am reluctant to have another one done. It might just have to be strip it back to basics, and time will heal. So Wednesday's a big day, and see where we are. I haven't done any vestibular exercises for a week and a half, just as a test to see if it was helping or not, because obviously 10 months of vestibular exercises hadn't made any difference to the acute dizzy turns which just come on. So I'm at a loss, really. I'm at a crossroads, physically and mentally. The good thing is tomorrow I start counselling sessions. Woohoo! 6 counselling sessions just as an outlet to speak to somebody other than friends and family, because you don't like to bore them after this length of time. And I've also been reading a lot of mindfulness books, which that has helped. And we'll just keep plodding forward. It's a very long video this time because, you know, it's the first time I've told my story. So we're 10 months into it. The roller coaster could be another 10 months, could be another 2 months. Who knows? I will update you, hopefully sooner rather than later, so it doesn't go on for 17 minutes the next video. So fingers crossed. Here's to the fight against vertigo or Meniere's or labyrinthitis or vestibular neuronitis, whatever term. Unfortunately, they're not going to put a label on my symptoms because they're not quite sure what it is. But we do know it's to do with the inner ear and the balance function and the brain just being completely haywire and not knowing what on earth is going on. So that said, I'll give you an update sooner rather than later. Take care. Bye.